Maurice Bucaille is a name known to many, crossing the boundaries of time, place, and nation. He is regarded as a beloved figure by people all around the world, a brave and peace-loving individual. He was born into a Christian family in France, but later in life his religious beliefs changed. He left Christianity and chose Islam. The thrilling story of his conversion from Christianity to Islam revolves around a single verse from the Holy Quran. Yes, just one verse from the Quran changed this great man's life. Impressed by the irrefutable truth of the Quran, he sought refuge in the peaceful shade of Islam. What was the life-changing event that led him to embrace Islam? Before diving into that fascinating story, let's learn a bit about him. Dr. Maurice Bucaille was born on July 19, 1920 and passed away on February 17, 1998. His father was named Maurice and his mother was Marie James Bucaille. Dr. Maurice Bucaille was a renowned French physician. Though medicine was his profession later in life, he gained fame as a scholar of comparative religion, an Egyptologist, a writer, and a member of the French Society. Dr. Bucaille practiced medicine from 1945 to 1982 and earned a reputation as a specialist in gastroenterology. His fame and reputation spread far beyond the borders of France, so much so that in 1973 Dr. Bucaille was appointed as the physician for the royal family of Saudi Arabia's then King Faisal. The family members of Egypt's then President Anwar Sadat were also among his patients. To know about the event that led to his conversion to Islam, we must go back to history. The proposal for research on the pharaoh's mummy. At the time, François Mitterrand was the president of France, serving from 1981 to 1995, nearly 14 years. This incident took place during the late 1980s. France requested Egypt to allow them to host the pharaoh's mummy in France. The purpose was to conduct significant archaeological research on the mummy within France's control. The Egyptian government of that time considered the request and agreed. The mummy was duly taken to France. The journey began from Cairo, the capital of Egypt, carrying the pharaoh's mummy. The plane carrying the pharaoh arrived at Paris airport. Even though it was just a mummy, it was the pharaoh after all, the once mighty ruler who claimed to be a god. The French president himself was present at the airport to welcome the pharaoh's mummy, along with ministers and officials. As the mummy was being taken down the plane steps, there was palpable excitement. The pharaoh had arrived. The president, ministers, and senior French officers stood in line in front of the plane, bowing their heads in respect to welcome the pharaoh. The once ruler of Egypt was received with royal ceremony and then taken to a special ward of France's archaeological center, where the country's top surgeons were waiting. They planned to perform an autopsy on the pharaoh's mummy, study it, and uncover the deep and complex secrets of its preservation over thousands of years. Research began. The autopsy and necessary research on the pharaoh's mummy were conducted under the supervision of France's most renowned doctors. The chief surgeon of the research team was Professor Dr. Maurice Bucaille. The therapists on the team wanted to repair the damaged parts and reconstruct the mummy, but Dr. Maurice Bucaille was focused on something else. He first wanted to find out how the pharaoh had died. He pondered over it, and after extensive research, the mystery of the pharaoh's death became clear to him. Through his research on the mummy, Dr. Bucaille realized that the pharaoh's body contained remnants of salt, indicating that the pharaoh had drowned. He also understood that the pharaoh's body had been retrieved from the sea almost immediately after drowning and quickly mummified for preservation. However, one question lingered in his mind. How had this mummy, unlike others, remained so well preserved, despite being retrieved from the sea? After all, according to logic, if a body is in a damp environment, bacteria would rapidly destroy it, as bacteria multiply quickly in such conditions. At one stage of the research, Dr. Maurice Bucaille prepared a final report in which he stated, "This is a new discovery." It was then that someone advised him, "Don't be too quick to declare this finding about the drowned mummy." But Dr. Maurice Bucaille was not one to be discouraged by hearsay. Instead, he firmly criticized such remarks, expressed his own views, and believed it was his responsibility to inform the world about such a significant discovery which could aid the advancement of modern science. In the meantime, one of his colleagues informed him that the Quran, the holy book of Muslims, mentioned the preservation of the pharaoh's body after his drowning. This revelation astonished Dr. Maurice Bucaille. He questioned the informant. How is this possible? This mummy was only discovered recently, in 1881, and the Quran was revealed 1400 years ago. The people of Arabia were unaware of the Egyptian method of mummification. We only learned about it a few decades ago. That night, Dr. Maurice Bucaille sat silently for a long time, staring at the pharaoh's mummy. He was deeply reflecting on what his colleague had whispered to him, that the Quran mentioned the preservation of the pharaoh's body. His curiosity grew, and he began to investigate the accounts of this event in other religious texts. He discovered that the Bible mentions the pharaoh's pursuit of Musa, peace be upon him, but says nothing about what happened to the pharaoh's body afterward. He questioned himself, is it possible that this mummy belongs to the pharaoh who pursued Moses? Could it be that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, knew about this 1400 years ago? One after another, questions kept haunting him. Relentless, Professor Bucaille sought answers. He realized that to find the exact answers to these questions, he had to study religious texts and verify the information presented in them. That night, Professor Maurice Bucaille could not sleep. He obtained a copy of the Torah and read it. He found that the Torah mentions the waters covering the pharaoh's army and their vehicles, and none of those who entered the sea survived. But even here, Professor Maurice Bucaille was left astonished, for the Torah makes no mention of the pharaoh's body's preservation. He found nothing on this subject in the Bible either. At this point, Dr. Maurice Bucaille decided that he would travel to a Muslim country and interview renowned Muslim autopsy specialists. According to his plan, he met with a Muslim doctor and informed him of his findings from his research on the pharaoh's mummy. He asked if the Quran contained any statement regarding the pharaoh's drowning and the preservation of his body. The Muslim doctor opened the Quran and read to Dr. Maurice the relevant verse where Almighty Allah states, "So today we will save you in body that you may be to those who succeed you a sign. And indeed, many among the people of our signs are heedless." Quran 10:92. This single verse of the Quran profoundly influenced Professor Maurice Bucaille. He praised the Muslim surgeons present and, deeply moved by the profound truth of the Quran, immediately declared loudly, "I believe in Islam, I believe in this Quran, Subhanallah." Professor Doctor. Maurice Bucaille returned to his homeland of France, but he was now a completely different person, a man with a new identity, a different status, and a different path illuminated by the light of faith. The path that leads one to the shores of salvation, connects one to the Creator, and guides the traveler to the radiant gardens of paradise. After returning to France, Dr. Maurice Bucaille halted his medical practice for the next 10 years. During this extended period, a continuous 10 years, he learned the Arabic language, gaining proficiency in it. Subsequently, he focused on determining whether there was any contradiction between scientifically proven facts and the statements of the Quran. During his research, he found a verse that answered many of his questions. The verse states, "Falsehood cannot approach it from before it or from behind it. It is a revelation from a wise and praiseworthy God." Quran 41:42.